Welcome to Film Talk Weekly. This is Castle Cersei with the Santa Fe International Film Fest. Today we are here with Michael Luke Litwak, a filmmaker. Are you in New York right now?
I'm in Brooklyn, yeah.
You're in Brooklyn. Um, I first heard of Michael, I think like back in 2014, you submitted to the Santa Fe International Film Festival with a short, Chaos and Danger.
Yeah.
I've probably watched it like 20 times and shared it with people. And when
Oh,
I'm
thank
sitting with
you.
my friends and we like share YouTube videos and stuff, I always share that one.
Oh, thank you.
And I realize now that's kind of your aesthetic, like, because I've been following you and on your email since then and waiting for you to do more and like a feature. So I was super excited to see that. And I think we should talk about that real quick because actually
Yeah.
today is Saturday, 1 p.m. Mountain Time, but
At 3 p.m. Eastern, we are having a digital screening of my first feature film called Molly and Max in the Future. And it is a sci-fi romantic comedy that we kind of describe as When Harry Met Sally in Space. And we made it with a small team of people with a lot of love and care. And we premiered it last year at South by Southwest. And then have had a really great, fantastic festival run, playing around the world and playing around the country. And now we are going to be releasing it out into the wilds, starting with this digital screening that has a live Q&A, and then it'll be on iTunes and Amazon and YouTube and anywhere that you can buy movies starting on March 22nd.
and so they should go to your website to
Yeah,
rent
if you go to
digital.
mollyandmax.com, MOLLI and max.com, or my website, michaellitwack.com, they both lead to the same place, but that can kind of direct you to wherever you need to find the different video on demand links.
And you're still on tour in theaters. Like we can find it in a
Yeah,
theater.
we're gonna be playing at theaters. We had our kind of the bulk of our theatrical run was started on February 9th, and we were in 40 theaters across the country that week. And now we have a variety of small theaters playing the movie, whether it's in Montana or Denver or they're kind of popping up, and we're working with their schedules to kind of get in there as much as we can. So we will continue to play theaters as long as theaters will have us, and then but eventually we'll be making the transition to video on demand completely.
And is this the biggest project you've done so far?
Yeah, definitely. It took 3 years kind of from start to finish, and I made shorts for about 10 years. Some of them were 2 minutes, some of them were 12 minutes, a variety of different kinds of things. Some of those shorts were bigger budget. I did some digital series, I did a VR series. So I've done a random assortment of things, but this was definitely the most creatively ambitious thing I've ever done, and took the longest, and was the most stressful at the same time, but also the most rewarding.
Yeah, I know you from shorts, and it's how do you make the transition from shorts to feature? Because I know there's so many filmmakers out there, and shorts are a good way to like show what you can do and like lower budget usually. Like, how did you make the transition for people that are still in the shorts era?
Yeah, I mean, it took me 10 years to kind of figure it out. And the deceptive thing is that you think it's kind of going to be a completely different thing from shorts to features. But I think what it took me so long to realize is that it's actually very similar in a lot of ways where, when you're making a short film, you kind of scrap together whatever resources you have, and you get a small group of friends together, and you go, find a location that you can get for free, and you use all these kind of indie filmmaking tips to make your short. And then, a mistake that I made was thinking that, oh, I can't just do that for a feature. I have to get a ton of money. I need to make a huge thing. It's so much harder and more difficult. And eventually I kind of realized that I had to make my feature the same way I made my short, which is to get a small group of friends together and, team up and find resources that you have access to, and make it kind of within your means. So that is, I think probably the biggest lesson I learned from trying to make that transition is to not worry too much about scaling up and making a huge first feature. And I hope to be making bigger movies than this one. It's a very small movie, although I don't think it feels small. But I think that was, an important kind of realization for me.
Yeah, so it's just like doing shorts but longer.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's exhausting. I mean, it's a marathon, and I think, I wouldn't have ever had the confidence to make this movie if I hadn't made my shorts. I think that like having those shorts is really important to kind of figure out what you want, and, who you like to work with, and, what is your style and what is your voice as a writer and as a director. So I really, really recommend making shorts, but I also think sometimes you can kind of get mentally stuck on like wanting to make that jump, but not necessarily knowing how.
Mhm.
But there's a ton of great examples of micro budget movies out there that people have made for 10 or 20 or 50 or $100,000. And, I never thought that I could raise a small amount of money to make a movie on my own. And but it was, and it wasn't easy, but you have to kind of just email everyone you've ever met and ask them if they're down to help out. And, um, it is a team sport, and you can kind of build your team slowly. And once people believe in the project and it feels achievable, they're much more likely to like want to help out versus, trying to find $5 or $10 million. Like that is just kind of unfathomable to me on being able to raise that much money on my own. So, I think it's about kind of just like finding a small team of people that believe in you, and part of it, building that team is also helping them out on their projects, and building up that trust so that they don't feel like you're exploiting them. And because everybody at the end of the day wants to do fun stuff that's creative, but also don't want to be taken advantage of. And I think that is a trust that you really have to earn from your collaborators.
I feel like you're really good at building these teams. Like I've seen some of the behind the scenes videos, um and the work is like, for shorts, I feel like the quality is, next,
Oh,
the
thank
whole
you.
thing's next level to me. I
Oh,
love
thank
your
you.
aesthetic. Like, so how did you find your team? Like you went to NYU?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I went to NYU, and I've been working with a lot of the same people for those 10 years. And it's, you kind of just find things through friends, and you try out different people, and sometimes you try out somebody new because the person you usually go to was unavailable, or got sick or something, and then you build up kind of a breadth of experience, and you work with different people, and you kind of realize also what you like about them, and where your kind of talent overlaps. My editor, who I've been working with since school, she's also my wife. And so we are married, and spend a lot of time together, and we have a very similar sense of humor. And so that's part of what bonds us as people and as friends. And as a result, it was a really kind of smooth editing process because she had read so many drafts of the script, and knew the movie inside and out. And my DP, he worked on set in the grip and lighting department on my shorts in film school. But then after we shot the shorts, he also had skills as a VFX artist. So I worked with him as a VFX artist. And then he kind of transitioned out of being a VFX artist and into primarily being a DP. And so then I started working with him as a DP because I liked working with him as a VFX artist. And then we shot a bunch of commercials together. And you kind of pick it up little by little, but it's definitely kind of a community sport. And you also hear kind of about people's reputations. So our first AD, Morgan, is also a talented writer director on her own in her own right. And she had a producer on her movie named Candace, and I knew Candace from school, but we didn't know each other super well. We kind of both had a mutual friend in Morgan. And then when I was looking for somebody to help kind of be our line producer slash producer on this movie, I talked to Morgan, and I asked her, how did you like working with Candace? And she said she's the best, line producer I've ever worked with. So, you it's a combination of a bunch of different things, and a lot of it also comes down to kind of timing of who is in the right place in their career, and if things can line up at the right time, so that when you're asking people to work on a very small movie, some of these people are working on really big shows and they're getting paid
Right.
a nice salary, and if they had to choose between my movie and a big money paying job, like I wouldn't hold it against them if they had to choose that. But if it's one of those things, like if you can find people at the right time, then it can all line up.
One thing I've noticed about all your work I've seen, your casting is so good. And
Thank
like
you.
I don't ever feel like the actors are acting. And I've seen a lot of shorts.
Yeah.
And it can be so distracting. So even going back to, your early days, I always just thought the casting was so great. And like how do you do the casting? Or you
So
have
I have a casting director that I work with named Kate Geller, and she's amazing and is so helpful. But ultimately, at the end of the day, like her job is to kind of put options and help make things happen. But I'm the one who kind of decides, who is in the movie and who isn't. But it's definitely a process, and I really love working with actors with comedic experience, because I think that kind of ability to think on your feet and respond to things is something that comedians or people that have comedy experience always kind of come to the table with. And so a lot of my films kind of take place in slightly absurd or very absurd scenarios, whether it's in space or on another planet. And I think it's really important that the actors kind of take it seriously, because that's kind of where the comedy comes from. And a lot of my films are can be very silly at times, and but I like to have kind of a mix of tones, and I think a great movie can feel kind of like a roller coaster ride, where there's you're going up the roller coaster and then you're going down, you're going to the side, and you do a loop-de-loop, and you don't want to have the same exact thing over and over again. So really finding people that have that range where they can be super dramatic and take things very seriously, but then also keep it light, and know how to time the delivery of a joke. And so much of it is just finding people that already have kind of that experience and that talent, and then really kind of guiding them through the minutia of a scene or something. So I feel really, really lucky that we were able to get such incredible actors for this movie. Zosia Mamet plays Molly, and she was one of the leads on Girls for so many years. And that show is just a perfect example of a show that mixes a bunch of genres and is super funny and very character driven. And then our male lead, Aristotle Athari, I found him on SNL. He was on there for
yeah.
a season, and he has a sketch comedy background, and he worked as a stand-up comedian for so long. And so it was really, when I found his stuff, he has this incredible range. And so to me, that's what's most exciting, is to be able to work with people that can do more than just one thing, and have multiple tools that they can kind of whip out at any point.
Yeah, and those are kind of big names, I think. I
Yeah,
knew who
definitely.
both of them were. I'm fans of both of them. I'm excited to see more of Aristotle Atari because I don't feel like I saw enough in SNL, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so like how did you get like for people who don't know, like how do you go from like doing shorts and like maybe with, smaller named actors or, to and
Yeah.
I've seen like in the trailer, there's other people I recognize too. Like,
Yeah, we
yeah.
have a really incredible cast, including Arturo Castro, who you may recognize from Broad City, Aparna
Yes, that's who.
Nancherla
Yeah.
from,
Hmm.
she's a legend. She's in so many things. Matteo Lane, stand-up comedian, Grace Kuhlenschmidt, who's really big online. Erin Darke from Good Girls Revolt, Okieriete Onaodowan from Hamilton. So we got really incredibly lucky. I mean, the short of it is, working with a casting director is one of those things that can add a lot of legitimacy to your project. And the at the end of the day, like, no matter who your casting director is, you have to send your script to the actor, and if they like it, then they like it, and if they don't like it, then they don't like it. So, but having someone like Kate come on board and kind of vouch for us, a casting director spends all day talking to different agents and different managers that represent actors. And so she has a relationship with them, and she knows kind of whose teams are difficult and whose teams are friendly, and who also like who wants to be doing different things right now, and also like what is realistic for timing, who's available, who's interested in doing an independent film, because not all actors are. Some actors, have their sights set on a big franchise movie. So much comes down to kind of where people are at in their careers. And so Kate, was the one that connected us with Zosia's team. But, Zosia lived in New York for a very long time, and we had some mutual friends. So we had kind of a little bit of a connection there. And then Aristotle as well. Kate kind of was the one who told me about him in the first place, and she knew his team. And we sent them the script, and he responded really well to it, as did Zosia. And so then after, you kind of get this initial interest, you go and meet with the actor, and you explain kind of, what your vision is for the project and where you see them. And then you kind of answer any of their questions or hear them kind of talk about what appealed to them. And you see if you kind of just get along. It's like a first date kind of. And, I always try to really prioritize working with people that are friendly and nice and easy to get along with, and kind of understand that making an independent film is not as glamorous as making a big studio movie. And, it really is kind of a team effort where everybody has to wear multiple hats, and the days are long, and there might not be air conditioning at one of your locations. And finding those people that really want to be a part of it. I don't think you want to be begging anyone to be a part of your film, because then, they're not going to be an incredible team member. So I just was so lucky that I found Zosia and Ari, and they were, big actors that had, they wanted to work on cool, interesting, creative things, even if they were a little bit smaller than what they normally work on. So yeah, it was really a joy working with both of them.
Yeah, they're there for the art. And I always get that about Zasha,
Yeah,
like the projects she chooses and things I see her in, like that it's about like the content and the project, like the art of it,
exactly.
not like, doing big budget. Um,
Yeah.
were you nervous to meet with, or is this just like how it is for you?
I mean, they were definitely the biggest actors I'd ever worked with. And but I don't know, I've worked with a lot of actors at this point, and I've learned about myself, about how to work with them. And I think, it's you have to we came out of the process all as friends, and I can text them if I want, and we're all like on really good terms, and had a great time. But like when you're working together, you're coworkers, and you have to kind of remember that you're there to get a job done, and you're there to work and perform at a high level. And it's not necessarily about kind of wanting them to be your friends. And so sometimes you have to have some tough love, or just be very direct to kind of about what you want, or how to, improve, and not necessarily worry about having everybody like you. But it's, I think you can do that and still end up being friends with everyone at the end of the day. But I think it's, I found that you have to kind of forget about how famous people are in order to view them as an equal, and because you can only really collaborate with people when you work with them as an equal.
Hmm. Um, so you mentioned that like you like comedians and people maybe with improv backgrounds or that are like quick on like is any of the dialogue is improvised or
Yeah, definitely. We
you write everything, right?
Yeah, I write almost everything I do. I mean, there's been a couple of, exceptions. I work in commercials too, and sometimes I don't write those. But with my personal projects, I almost always write them. And um I love improvising with actors. And part of what we did on this movie is we had 5 days of rehearsal where we could do read through the script in a very low stakes situation and talk about the scenes and talk about, how do we make them better? And, similarly, when you're getting to know an actor, you might be a little bit intimidated working with them. They might be a little bit intimidated working with somebody that they've never worked with before, regardless of whether or not I'm famous or not. But they might just be intimidated. Oh, does this guy actually know what he's doing? And so, rehearsal, I think, is a really great tool to get to know them and figure out what they like and what they don't like. And, every actor is kind of different. And you have to kind of be willing to adapt to, what their strengths are. And so, both Ari and Zosia have great instincts. And part of that rehearsal process was us kind of talking about things and challenging one another and seeing, maybe the scene's too long, maybe we cut it down, or maybe this is actually just the start of something. And so we improvised kind of in that process, and then I would go home and rewrite and then bring it back, and we would reread it. And then when we got on set, we also did a ton of improvisation, and especially, a lot of, with the exception of Ari and Zosia, almost everybody else was only on for 1 day or maybe 2 days.
We are here talking about your new feature, which is playing in theaters near you and also launching on demand. Tell us about it.
It will be launching video on demand March 22nd
Okay.
on Apple and Amazon and Google Play and anywhere that you can buy movies.
Okay. Tell me about distribution, like for filmmakers. Like, I mean, I think people make films and then, there's this whole business part to it. Like, there's the art and then there's the business. And I think a lot of filmmakers, new filmmakers are, it's like, oh yeah, I got to be a business person too. So how does that work for you?
Yeah, totally. I mean, we premiered the movie at South by Southwest, and that is where we met our distributor, Level 33 Entertainment.
They just come
And
up to you after the film?
yeah, basically, it's really hard to get distribution anywhere, but it helps to premiere at a top film festival. And there are very few festivals where distributors go. South by Southwest, Sundance, maybe Tribeca,
Right.
Cannes, and Toronto. And so if you're looking to sell a movie at a festival, those are kind of the only festivals that you can, kind of use as a market. Also Berlin, but um, the I think a lot of it is kind of custom outreach and cold outreach to some of these places. We had a team of 5 producers on my movie, and each of us knew 1 or 2 people at a couple different companies. And so because of that, we were able to get the movie out there. Some filmmakers use sales agents, which are kind of agents that take a fee and say that they will introduce you to distributors. That has kind of, in my experience, from what I've heard, can be very hit or miss. If you can get a good sales agent, then they can be very helpful, but you could also potentially get a good sales agent and they could still not be able to sell your movie. And then they might still take 10% of a deal that you got on your own, or more
Oh,
than 10% often. So it really kind of depends on your situation and how well connected you and your team are to distributors in the first place. And part of that is that, each of us have spent 10 years kind of building contacts and meeting people, and those people all move around. So someone you meet who might be an intern at a company 1 year, 5 years later, they're working in development or in acquisitions, and then 2 years after that, they might, leave the film industry altogether. So it really is kind of a patchwork quilt of your experience and your connections. But there are options for filmmakers who don't get into film festivals too. One thing I've heard of is Film Hub, which is something where you can kind of upload your film and they'll put it on a bunch of different services for you and take less than a traditional distributor. So we were very lucky that we had a distributor who wanted to put our movie in theaters. They had a plan for it. I don't think anyone should really ever expect to get their movie in theaters, and I certainly didn't. But they came to us and they kind of pitched us on this plan, and so far they've been really fantastic. And so. They are taking the lead on selling the movie domestically and then selling it internationally, which is a whole nother kind of side of things. And they take a percentage, and they gave us, an upfront sum And there's kind of a million different ways that can happen. And I think that, self-distribution is also a good option for a lot of films and a lot of filmmakers, because, I think a lot of filmmakers finish their movies and they just kind of want to dump them into somebody else's lap and have them do all the hard work of getting it out there. And the truth is just that it's very, very hard to get people to pay attention. And a lot of those distribution companies do not exist for a long time because of that. And so I think whenever you give your movie over to somebody, you're kind of putting your fate in their hands. And so while I'm really, really happy with our distributor, I like them a lot. We also did a lot of our own kind of promotion for the film. I cut 17 different BTS videos talking about kind of how we made the movie. And, we really kind of, every member of our team really helped get it out there to our kind of personal contacts, and that you're working with them as a collaborator. They're not just the person that's going to come in and do all of the work for you.
Hmm. I mean, it seems like it would be easier to get your film played out there with all the streaming services and channels. Like, I mean, clearly things have changed in the last, like, even since you've been a filmmaker, you know? Like,
Yeah, I mean, a lot of those services are unfortunately not buying independent films anymore. There was kind of a gold rush, wild, wild west moment where, as soon as Netflix came onto the scene, they were scooping up movies left and right at
yeah,
places like Sundance. And, they've kind of shifted their strategy to make more stuff in-house.
right.
And it's kind of a bummer because it's hurt the independent film ecosystem. And I don't think the quality of the product has necessarily like improved. So I think there's a ton of great movies out there that are looking for homes and are underappreciated. And maybe they'll come back around and start buying things again, but I'm not holding my breath.
Hmm. Um, I guess let's talk about like your influences, your inspiration, your aesthetic. You have like you have an aesthetic, and I love it. I love sci-fi. I love like kind of old tech a little bit. Like,
Yeah, analog.
I love
We
your
kind of
aesthetic. Yeah.
Yeah, we kind of call it elevated lo-fi.
Okay.
And
Okay. Great.
um,
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to describe, but I think the aesthetic kind of comes from the process of the way that we do things, which is that we don't use any CG really. We do a little tiny bit here and there, and we put a lot of things
What
together
is
on a
CP
computer.
for
CG, like
CG?
computer generated, so like
Okay.
3D visual effects.
Okay.
So everything we do is kind of practical visual effects, and so that means like handmade models and miniatures and puppets and stop motion, and um, trying to just keep everything physically real and not kind of get lost in the world of 3D animation, which I love. Don't get me wrong. I think there's a lot of incredible 3D animation out there, but it just looks slightly different. And so we kind of wanted to go back to the way that things looked in the 70s and the 80s. And because we have a lot of nostalgia for that time, and those were the movies that kind of formed our taste growing up. And so that is something that is also kind of achievable on an indie scale where when you kind of lean into something looking lo-fi, it's on purpose rather than a mistake, or because you didn't have enough money, which is true. We also don't have enough money,
Yeah,
but
it's probably informed by budget at first, but then like it's really cool and let's go with yeah.
definitely,
Yeah.
yeah. But I think that is like an independent film trick of one of the oldest of all time, of kind of leaning into what do you have access to and what can you achieve with what you have.
Kind of
And
like working in those limitations. Like I think
yeah,
creatives can, you know, be more creative with limitations sometimes. I can.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. No, I mean, I think when you have an option to do everything, it can be kind of overwhelming,
Yeah,
and
totally.
sometimes narrowing down that can push you to be a little bit more creative.
Yeah. So talk more about the special effects. Do you do them? You are making these models and
Yeah, so Zach Stoltzfus, my director of photography, I told you before, I originally started working with him because he was a VFX artist, and I worked with him as a VFX artist, and then he kind of transitioned out of that, and we started working together as a director and as a DP. And then when it came to make this movie, we started building everything ourselves, and me and Zach ended up doing about 90% of the visual effects on the movie from start to finish. And there were a couple of small things that we farmed out to some other people because they were very specific skill sets. But, we spent about 18 months kind of building all of the backgrounds for the film and, trying things out, testing them, shooting them, compositing them. We shot up for 1 week on a big LED stage. Using these giant TV screens essentially, and then we shot for 3 weeks on a traditional soundstage using both green screen and classic rear screen projection. It really was a little bit of everything, and we had more than 950 VFX shots in the movie. Essentially, every single shot in the movie is a VFX shot. But we were able to do it with a team of mostly just two people because, again, we kind of, adapted the workflows to like what we knew we could pull off, and everything was, achieved in After Effects.
I want to hear about how you got to where you are, like beginning to end. Like, did you always want to be a filmmaker? Did you want to be an astronaut?
Yeah, I mean, I knew from a pretty young age that I wanted to be a filmmaker. I grew up in Los Angeles, and so working in film and TV is a very normal thing to do out there. And so I kind of always knew it was an option. And then my parents sent me to like movie camp in like sixth and seventh grade. They were very
Cool.
supportive of my interests, and I kind of grew up watching big budget action spectacle films like Star Wars and Indiana Jones, and
I see those influences
yeah,
in there, and not in a way that's like, I mean, it's kind of a love letter, sort of, or like,
100%.
yeah.
Yeah. And so, that was kind of what sucked me in the first place. And then as I kind of got older and in my teenage years, I kind of found myself falling in love with a different type of movie, which was movies like the Before trilogy or Annie Hall or When Harry Met Sally, movies about people walking around New York City and complaining about their therapists and talking
Hmm.
about kind of everyday things, and movies that had a vision and
Yes.
had a voice, but were still kind of odd and different and unique. And I moved to New York to go to NYU, and I really fell in love with New York while I was there, and I'm still here now. But I started making short films, and in the process of, I think it's filmmaking is kind of it's a physical action, and you have to kind of do it to learn. And so, I made dozens and dozens of short films over the years, but in film school, I started making shorts, and in the process of just making shorts, I kind of realized that I wanted to make movies that were true to what got me into filmmaking in the first place, but also kind of true to what kept me in filmmaking. And so, that meant that it was going to be a combination of these sci-fi, fantasy, action adventure films, but then also these neurotic,
That's how I would
character-driven
describe you, like you've nailed
film.
it. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And
that's what I love
so
about them.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
And so, part of it was just like, well, I want to, tell these stories in these bigger worlds, but I don't have the money or the budget to do that. So I'm going to have to find creative ways to, around that and figure out solutions to, how do I tell a big story on a very small scale? And so, little by little, like that's the great thing about short films is you can kind of dip your toe in the water and see how you like it. And, I learned little VFX tricks on each one, and I kind of resisted becoming a VFX guy or compositor because it's a really tedious, difficult work. And I was really hoping that I could raise money and pay somebody else to do it because I don't really necessarily find it that fun. But after a certain point, I spent 7 years wandering the desert of Hollywood and trying to get money for bigger movies, and I got very close a number of times, and but then COVID hit, and COVID kind of um, collapsed. Like, I had another project that I was trying to get made, and it kind of collapsed. And so I decided to kind of go back to the drawing board and write a movie that I knew I could make with a bunch of my friends if I had to. And that was kind of the birth of Molly and Max. And that whole time, over those 10 years, I was also working in commercials and directing advertisements and branded content. And little by little, you pick up little things here and there, and you learn about yourself as an artist, and you learn how to work with other people. And I think you can get something out of every experience you have if you're able to put yourself into it. So, that all of that kind of led to writing Molly and Max, which was, inspired by a bunch of different things. But essentially, I rewatched When Harry Met Sally, and I wanted to kind of update it for today, but set it in a world that was like today, which is, kind of absurd and overwhelming and filled with all of these different things that make us stressed out. And but still at the end of the day, like, our personal relationships are one of the biggest parts of our lives, and especially our romantic ones. And so the question was, well, how do I kind of update that story for now? And take some of the questions posed by that film, and then ask them again in different ways. And so, from a structural level, that was kind of, the jumping off point. And then it was kind of about building out characters that felt unique, and not just a cold copy of the originals, but and then kind of let the characters take me in different places after that.
Yeah, it looks so fun. I can't wait to see it. I watched her short Alpha Squadron, and I feel like there's some
Yeah,
similar themes in there. Like,
definitely.
they're flying like spaceships, working in space, and but having these like the kind of conversations you'd have in a cubicle with someone.
Yeah,
Like,
100%.
yeah,
No, definitely. That's, and that's kind of where what I realized was my sweet spot was,
yeah, that's
kind of
yeah, so good.
very relatable, normal kind of people dealing with kind of absurd, over the top scenarios.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. We can see all your shorts on your website, so
Yeah,
like I encourage everybody to go check those out. Like, they're just fun, and there's music videos. This is all your creative work. When you do
yeah.
commercials, it's someone else's vision. How much creativity, like how much creative license or control do you have?
It really depends on the project. So there have been certain commercials where I come in and I just execute what somebody else wants, 100% of the way. And then there have been ones where they know half of kind of what they want, and then I'm able to kind of suggest things and guide it in one direction or another. And it's usually somewhere in between. And so there's always going to be little small tweaks you have going from an idea to reality. And that's kind of the job of a commercial director, is to kind of bring someone else's idea to life. But part of, I think, why I get hired as a comedy director is that, I know how to work with actors, and I know how to get good performances out of them. And I can suggest jokes. And at the end of the day, like, most of the time people will put aside whether or not it's their idea or not, if other people are laughing and other people enjoy it, because they're the ones that kind of get the credit anyways. So it can be really fun and collaborative too.
Yeah, I assume they're hiring you for a commercial because they like your aesthetic. Like,
Yeah, totally. I mean,
at this point, yeah,
most of the commercials I do are not kind of in this lo-fi, aesthetic, but a lot of them kind of take place in reality and look like normal commercials. But I think they're hiring me because of my sense of humor and my ability to work with actors.
and like I think a lot of filmmakers make commercials or music videos because you got to pay the bills while you're working,
Yeah,
on the climb.
100%. Yeah. No, I mean, branded content is it can be a grind on its own, but you can learn stuff, and you can find collaborators, and you can get your friends paid, and you can support yourself doing it.
Uh, so have you done comedy yourself?
I took an improv class, but not really like because I wanted to be an improviser, because I thought it might help me learn how to work with actors. And I guess it did a little bit, but at the same time, like I think all writing is a little bit of improvising because you're imagining people in your head and then you're imagining how they would respond, and you have to kind of get inside the head of that character. So in that sense, I think I'm a really good improviser, but when it comes to like being on stage, I'm pretty awful. If you put me on the spot, I just kind of freeze up. So I took one or two classes and then realized it was not for me, which I kind of knew going into it. But I think it's a good idea as a director to take an acting class, and um, even if it's to realize that, it's not as you don't need to be as intellectual as maybe some acting professors think you do. So but I have a small cameo in my movie, honestly, more as a joke than anything. But
So I think we're wrapping up here. Thank you for coming. Tell us again, give me the whole like the plug, the elevator speech, how we can find you and your films.
yeah, so if you just Google Molly and Max in the future, it should come up. It's MOLLI. But we're going to be on video on demand March 22nd. We have a digital screening on March 9th at 3 p.m. Eastern via a service called Kino. That's Kino. But check out mollyandmax.com or michaellitwak.com, and that will direct you to the right place to find the film.
Cool. All right. Thanks for joining us. This is Castle with Film Talk Weekly in the Santa Fe International Film Festival, here with Michael Luke Litwak. Thank
Thanks
you.
for having me.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.